What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Industry Icons. This is a show where I do deep dive interviews with some of the most iconic and interesting people in the music industry. In our show today, our special guest is Timofey Reznikov, who's the producer, mix, and mastering engineer for David Guetta. He's also worked with other big-name celebrity artists such as Armin van Buuren. And he's one of the guys behind Abletunes.com, which creates really cutting-edge and high-quality Ableton Live templates. He does all of the engineering for each one of those templates. I connected with him a couple months ago through a video that I did on the iZotope channel, where we were looking at some of the top charting tracks, and a couple David Guetta tracks came onto my list. I loved the way they were engineered, and so I looked at who did the engineering, and Timofey's name came up. I reached out to him, sparked up a conversation, and he has been just an absolute wealth of knowledge. He has decades of experience, and he's been one of the few people that I've connected with which has been so generous and open with sharing his knowledge. So make sure you strap in, pay attention, and listen to what he has to share over the next few minutes, because I was just blown away. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Timofey, nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you so much to invite me.
Right on. Well, we've got a wonderful list of questions to go through. I asked some of the people in my community on our Discord server if they had any questions, and we've got a lot of different exciting topics to cover. So let's hop into it. And first, big ups and thanks so much for your time. I know you're a really busy guy, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your knowledge.
Amazing. Yeah, let's go.
Right on. So you've had, so far in your career, you've done a ton of work over many years, and that's kind of culminated in a couple of Grammy nominations. And I'd love to hear about how those came together and what those projects were like.
Yeah, that's been an amazing surprise for me. And I've been a part of producers and mix mastering engineer for the track I'm Good with David Guetta and Bebe Rexha. And well, that was a huge hit, and that's been nominated for a Grammy. And the next year, as well, a track called One in a Million, also with Bebe Rexha, been nominated as well. So that's two huge surprises. I'm very, very happy, and thanks for destiny and the universe that I work with David, and it could be possible.
Wonderful. And what kind of impacts did you notice on your career after the nominations? Like, did you notice that there were more clients reaching out to you? You know, did you notice that it kind of elevated your reputation in the industry at all, or?
Yeah, maybe it's not like direct impact, and I feel like right away that something changed. It's more maybe about my self-confidence. It's definitely nice to put in my bio on my website or social media. Is also a great boost. It helps me to grow as a music producer as well. And well, definitely I have a little bit more of the mix mastering requests. So that's it. It's not like a very, very big deal in terms of my workflow. And the most of the time, I'm still a music producer than a mix mastering engineer. I'm trying to do more and more of mix mastering, and I really like to do it, actually. So
yeah, we were talking about that before, and you were saying that when you're in the music producer hat, you're in the writing, you're creating the art, whereas when you're on the engineering side of things, then you're kind of you're polishing what's there without really second guessing or worrying or putting a bunch of creative energy towards the piece itself. It would be great if you could talk about that a little bit. What is it that draws you to mixing and mastering?
So that's true. I have two different hats that actually blends maybe in one. The most of time I'm a music producer, and like deep understanding of how to compose, how to make layers works together good. Or sometimes when I'm working with the stems of another project, I see more as a musician all the layers and the maybe complicated things that don't really need to be done that way. Yeah, I think one of my strong point now in the mix mastering engineer is I'm a profound music producer, and I had a lot of experience working with a project of different producers, maybe from just Ableton project or from stems. And I learned how to musically approach the mixing and choose the right layers. To make the right choices musically, not only the technically. And that's how to say, it's open a sort of a very easy door, like a vision on the mix mastering process right now. When I listen to the track, I immediately know actually what to fix, what to do. So the finalizing of the thing is quite fun for me and straightforward. And how I produce right now, when I do a project, I already put a very light mastering channel, only like limiter, compressor, that's it, on the master. And I always already like work that it's limit a little bit, because, well, limiting in pop and commercial music is always already a part of the sounding flavor. Um, so, and I don't know if many other producers work like that, but I mix and master my own production at the same time I produce them. So when I produce my music, my tracks, I make like the final result already mixed and mastered. I don't need to do an extra step. Okay, now we're done with the music, with the creation part. Let's do mix master. So it's done.
Yeah. And you had said that when you're working in a project, so you're using Ableton Live for all of your production, right?
Yes.
And then you're also using Ableton Live for mixing and mastering work. That's the DAW that you're in. You're not using other DAWs, right?
Yeah, I'm very fast with it. I know every little tricks and corners. So yeah, I can.
That's great.
Really fast.
And so your workflow is you're in a production where you're doing everything from the ground up. You are doing the mix and the master, oftentimes as well. And you're doing the mix and the master in the same project. So you're not bouncing out tracks or stems and doing that in a separate project. You just do it all in the same project, start to finish.
Exactly. Usually exactly that way. Because, well, I don't know. It's simple. I think it's more like a habit of how I usually produce. Sometimes I start to exchange stems with another producer. They send me stems back, and then it's interesting to visualize a little bit different way my own productions, and I see maybe at some levels that could be mixed more carefully, just more like volumes, maybe things, and I learn on that experience as well. So in my future productions, I think and I check all those things to get better. But it's definitely a very good approach to export all the stems and mix and master in a different session, because it definitely helps also to group better all the instruments and see the dynamic. That's a really strong point to mixing from stems.
Yeah, totally. And I do the same thing. I when I'm working on my own projects, or sometimes when I'm collaborating with an artist, or being more of the producer role, I do all the mixing and mastering right in the same project because it's just simpler that way. But then when working with clients that are where I might be doing the mix and maybe they're using a different DAW, or I'm just doing the master, of course, then you're working from audio. And I like that too. And I always learn something from it as well. Something about seeing the audio printed, looking at the waveforms, and working with stuff where you can't dig into a track to alter the effects. They're committed. Something about that is also interesting. It's just there's many ways to work, and it's neat to be in these different workflows when you do those different roles like you do, right? So yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for giving us a bit of a window into your workflow. I always find it so interesting. This is part of why I love doing these types of talks, is learning about how other people work and the similarities between how I work, but also then the differences, and be like, oh, maybe I'll try that, or I used to do that and I don't do it anymore. Maybe I'll revisit that.
Oh yeah. Also, like what you see with stems is, when you forget to cut the reverb tail, when, for example, the drop, and you see all those little imperfections That's really the only way to see it all. Yeah.
So about that, actually, that's a really interesting point because the way that we met, of course, was when I did the video with iZotope and I was analyzing the Billboard Hot Dance and Electronic songs, and two David Guetta songs were on that chart. And I noticed that both of them were mixed and mastered by you. So I reached out and we started a dialogue. And one of the comments that I had on why I really liked your engineering work on it was the Beautiful People song, I think, or it might have been Forever Young. I think it was Forever Young I was talking about.
I think, yeah, you highlighted Forever Young, yeah.
And it had these big, lush reverbs and delays, all these time-based spatial effects on it. And I was commenting how that when you have long delay tails and reverb tails, that they can be masking on elements in the mix. But that wasn't happening in your mix. And I noticed that you had the kind of it was like a have your cake and eat it too technique, where you had the big, long, lush reverbs, but then you also had these really tight and punchy, clear drums. And so when you're working in projects, what do you do with those big, long reverb tails then? Are you rendering those to audio and cutting them? Or how are you getting those to play nicely with the other mix elements?
Yeah, this is, there is a few techniques that I can explain. Well, the low, of course, it has to stay dry and you don't put any reverb on it. That's always like this. But with the high frequencies, layers, plugs, etc., of course, you have to decide what layer actually is most important for you musically, and what stands out the most for the listener. That way, you can choose on what instrument you put the reverb. And the interesting thing that usually the listener, you don't understand on what exactly instrument this huge reverb is applied, and it gives so you don't over mess with the different reverbs you mix, but you give this huge reverb effect only one, but it's give that, I don't know how to say, that feeling, a little fake feeling maybe, that it's everything is wide. It's, for example, when you work with the percussions, and if you do all your percussions, for example, you have claps, hi-hats, shakers, like tambourine, or maybe some little snares here and there, and you start to play with the panorama and stereo wideness or something. If you do everything wide, it will be very complicated for the brain to understand. It's too much information. So to do that cool stereo wideness effect, I usually choose maybe only 1-2 elements from the whole percussions. There's maybe just the shakers and a few claps, maybe a layer of claps that just give the nice stereo feel. And it's not that wide at the end when you check to the stereo visualizer. It's not that crazy stereo, but the brain see it really nicely done.
Yeah, great points. So excluding bass from your reverbs, which you'd be doing with an EQ within the reverb if it has that, or an EQ on the return track. And then, are you using return tracks, by the way, or are you putting your reverbs in line as inserts?
Yeah, for room reverb, for example, I use the return tracks, absolutely. I like to use very short reverb. It's even shorter than a regular room. And I see it, well, I apply it on many tracks, usually all the high frequencies, mid frequencies, so it can be instrument, hi-hats, maybe some drums, the vocals. Vocals, sometimes they have their own little reverb
their own treatment
techniques.
Yeah, vocals are very special, unique in terms of their sound.
And so I send to the reverb instruments, hi-hats, etc. And it's a very, very short reverb that I consider almost like a new track, a new almost instrument that I blend with everything, and it gives a very interesting and nice, I think, like psychoacoustic trick that your brain understand that all those instruments been in the same space in one room, and it's a glue effect, so you don't hear any reverb. Like there's no tail. It's not like a reverb, but it's more really like playing with the mind.
Mm-hmm. So it's very, very, very short. Like yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
And with that, are you again using the return routing? So you'd set it up on one single short reverb on a return track, and you just send different things to it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and when we were talking, you were saying you even apply it on stuff in like your low mids and maybe like upper bass even, but you definitely exclude the kick because in the extended mixes that you make where the kick is really isolated at the beginning, it sounds weird if you had reverb on that, right?
On the short attacks, on the kicks, you can hear a little bit of the tail of this reverb. So absolutely exclude the kick. The bass can go there, so just be sure that you cut a little bit of the lows on your room, so it's not boomy, it's not getting muddy. So that's the main secret. I don't know if it's a secret.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's a really good point. And we were talking earlier about how a lot of people think that you should never ever use reverb on your master, but we were talking because we're both Ozone users, and we were talking about how back in the earlier versions of Ozone, they actually used to have a really sneaky mid-side reverb module in Ozone as a mastering platform. And this kind of reminds me of that. I kind of wish they still had that because it could be useful for things like this because it also had an EQ where you could remove low end and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I hope they will put it back on one day.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that's the short reverb. Now with your really long reverbs, so I want to make sure I've got this correctly. So you said you're using the really long reverbs and you choose one instrument. So like say in your synth leads and plucks and pads, you'll choose one layer where you apply a long reverb. But let's say that you have a big long reverb, like a 5-second decay or something, and it's in the breakdown, but then you have your drop hit. Are you somehow cutting that reverb tail so it stops when like the drop kick and bass comes in so you get that clarity? Or how are you managing that in your mix?
Absolutely, yeah. Then I just take a volume automation and I cut them at the right moment. This is, I think that's actually one of the things that beginner producers don't pay attention to. So I just actually mixed one track recently, and just the beginning, there was a guitar, and it starts already with some tail from, I think it was just a cut of maybe a long loop with different things played, and they just took one and they decided to make this as like the first thing you hear is like intro. And there's a little tail with other notes, I guess, that not been in the those of
a loop that's been rendered with reverb and then cut totally makes sense.
From something else, and I hear, so I guess they hear mostly like this is beautiful guitar, we want to do an intro with it, but I hear all those unnecessary information that goes with it, and well, that was something already printed in a stem. I couldn't remove it. But this is I think one of the most seen mistakes that I see in producers' stems. It's they don't pay attention about all this extra information that it's just a garbage. You have to be very careful of what you're doing. So I see also the mix and your dynamic range as well. It's like a box where you can put only a limited quantity of information on like little pieces, and you have to be careful what are you putting there.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that as one of the mistakes. You have you're a part owner in the company Abletunes.com, right?
Yes.
And so those probably hundreds now of different Ableton templates, right? That are full songs that are all done mixed with effects. And did you say you do all the mixing and mastering for those projects?
Yeah, mostly like I supervise everything. So I hear and I choose if we want this project or we don't. And sometimes, when especially it's an evening and I'm a little bit tired and I like the music is great. Like the track and this template sounds nice. But then I say, okay, and I get the project. Then I have to make it actually ready to sell for producers. And it's really like my mission is to simplify and remove all the unnecessary treatments things. And I mix and master almost every project that is on sale there. And I see like a lot of common problems that producers doing, and it's very interesting. And it's interesting that it's actually pretty the same, but with different producers.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So you are in a rare position where not only are you a talented producer, mixing and mastering engineer, but now you're also involved in this company where people are sending and pitching you tons of projects. And so you get to see not just hear the final stereo file, but you get to see inside the project and the workflow of all of these other producers. And because of your specialized knowledge, you can pick out exactly what's wrong with them, exactly what needs to be changed. And I know that a key part of your personal philosophy around music production is simplicity. And so you mentioned that a lot of what you're doing is you're removing things and you're simplifying processing and removing elements.
Yes.
So what are you finding that people are putting in that's unnecessary, the things that you're removing?
Yes. So, well, I just will give a little bit more detail about what is actually the template on Abletunes. This is an Ableton Live project with everything is composed. Usually we try to do the most of things with the MIDI, with the synths. So it's not just one stem that you can do anything. So it's really something like a very good produced and mixed and mastered starting point for a new production. So that's the thing, like why it exists. And so the project that I receive, like one biggest problem is producers don't understand the logic and what effect you can put after effect. So for example, sometimes I see like let's say equalizer, sidechain compressor, and then the reverb. So somehow producers don't understand that sidechain has to do this docking effect. But if you put a reverb after docking effect, of course, the reverb will play on the docking effect. So it's create a mess. Also, a very, very funny thing. Well, this is more like, it looks like a joke. I see so there is in Ableton there is a little unit that calls utility. It's just for the volume. Sometimes I see like 3 in a chain. One is -6, another is +6. For some reason, it's like, and I heard there'd been something in the blogs or something that they think that it do something with the sound. It's like a mix of. Well, also one big problem that producers doing it's cutting the 100 hertz. You know, like there is advice that you have to cut all the low frequencies on all your instruments on your groups. And that this is true. Of course, we don't need all the lows. And for example, in the guitars, on live instruments, on vocals, there is always some signal in very low frequencies, and we have to cut it. But they do it on everything, and sometimes we have 5 layers of lead and chords. Then it's grouped. So on every track, on 5 tracks where we have exactly the same 100 hertz cut, then on a group cut, and then maybe it's this group in another group, and there is again the cut, and finally we have the pike, like the spike on the 100 hertz. It sounds bad and the worst when actually it's a mix mastering stems, so I can't get any information under it, and the mix sounds very empty and lifeless because of this. So the producers need to be very careful and actually understand why they cut it. Is maybe it's better to cut them even more if it's like very high trancy lead and you just need those nice very high frequencies, then maybe cut at 500 hertz. But if it's a nice beautiful guitar with a lot of reverb, leave this lows and this information. It's normal to have it enough for human brain. It's actually normal to hear the low frequencies even in a high frequency instrument. That actually they give the life. Well, you need to be careful of course if you mix 3 kicks and the bass guitar all together without cutting any lows, of course it won't sound good.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, I used to make that mistake myself. And when I was earlier in my career and before I got into really mixing and mastering and before I developed my ear, I was kind of blindly following advice of clearing low frequencies. And so I think that's why a lot of people are trying to do it, is they're trying to make space theoretically for the bass and the sub and the kick. And what you're saying is that that's not necessary. So how do you kind of find the sweet spot with that, where you have enough space in the low end that you're not getting masking and conflicting mud from your other instruments, and the bass and the kick have room, but you're not also kind of like making these anemic or thin sounding instruments?
Yes. Well, I think the golden rule, it's if you have a sub, it's 1 sub at a time. You can put 2 or even 3. Also, like in this project that I mixed just 2 days ago, in the drop, there been a kick, a high kick with the badly cut sub frequencies, and when the drop hit, there been a huge hall kick like effects of boom. When it's in the drop, and this is absolutely wrong composing. There's a 1 sub element at the time. You can, for example, fake, like there is a many, for example, you cut the first kick and you do like a drop without the first kick, but then you do this huge impact and then the second kick arrives. So it's exactly like this puzzle. You have this space and you have a lot of little boxes that fit only in this. You can put 3 or 4, so you have to always choose which one goes at this time.
Yeah, exactly.
For example, if you work with the low end bass, you have a nice acoustic bass guitar that, for example, plays 16s. But real bass guitars sometimes don't give that EDM electronic, very low subby bass. You have to layer it. So you can take another synthetic bass, cut everything until, let's say, 100 or 80 hertz, and cut the same, but with a high-pass filter on the bass guitar, or even more sometimes. So we just choose what the pleasant information from this guitar when you're listening, what is nice. If you cut a little bit too much, you lose the body, you lose that bass guitar feel, and you overlay with the sub, but not just pure on the same time altogether.
Yeah, fully agreed. Especially in the low end where headroom is being consumed mostly by those frequencies, you have to be so careful in your low end.
Yeah.
When you are doing cuts, and like you said, it is important to do cuts in some places, right? You can't let everything be full range. So cuts are appropriate. It's just a matter of where they are and then how steep or how high the filter is. When you're cutting, are you typically using cut filters, like high-pass filters, low-pass filters, or are you sometimes using shelving filters to be a bit more gentle? Like how are you working with massaging the low frequencies?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Here I don't have an exact mathematic explication. This is usually I do by ear. If, for example, as with this example with the bass guitar, I think this bass guitar sounds amazing and this really gives the soul to the whole bass line group, I will maybe reduce the sub frequencies and really play gently, and maybe do a high pass and low, high cut and low cut, to just maybe do a little shelf in 80 hertz to just keep this little piece. Or yeah, it's really depend of the instrument. Sometimes I do the slow shelf, and I prefer sometimes doing, because to not go again to the situation when you cut everything on 100 hertz. So I always leave all the information. Your mix stays musical.
Yeah. Well, another big question actually about EQing, and this is something that's debated back and forth by a lot of mastering engineers, and I've seen very talented mastering engineers on both sides of this argument. Some people say that you should cut with a high-pass filter the inaudible low frequencies on your master. So let's say 15 hertz, 20 hertz, 25 hertz with a high-pass filter. And then other people say, no, don't ever do that. And of course, with anything in audio, it's dependent on the program material. You might have a song and there's just, there's a high amplitude 15 hertz signal in there that you should high pass that. But I'm talking about in general, especially with dance and electronic music where you're not having a lot of microphone audio recordings. How are you approaching that in your masters? Are you high passing the very low frequencies out, or?
Yeah, most of the time I do the low shelf. I start to cut maybe from 30 hertz, and the low shelf goes like minus 5-10 dB sometimes. So I'm just trying to find that perfect way to keep the punch of the kick like nice sub. It depends also a lot of the style what I'm doing. Sometimes it's progressive or Afro house when the kick are very low and you almost feel that woof, like this very subby thing. So if you do a cut, and it's also like something that I hear clearly when I cut it. Sometimes it don't remove this unnecessary lows. So I feel I have much more control with the low shelf than with the cut. I do cuts, like very hard cut, only in case when I want to gain a little bit, like little extra dynamic range without going to the distortion, to like too much clipping. And I know I play like I'm removing this extra information from 0 to 20 to 25 hertz to just play around a little bit with this limiting, like very final maximizer thing. So that's my way of work.
Okay, yeah, great. And I know you are a big fan of Ozone, and you're an Ozone user. So when you're doing things like that, are you using entirely the EQs in Ozone for that?
Yeah, yeah. The biggest part of my work is made with isotope Ozone, and yeah, I just it's in the equalizer that I do this cut. Sometimes I use two equalizers. One is for mid and side, and another is just like little tweaks at the end of what I want to cut for. Also, sometimes I do a low shelf on the side signal, like left and right, to cut the lows. Sometimes they pass a little bit, and I cut it like that. And yeah, and also what I use Ozone most of the time. Well, I'm a user of, I think, from the version 4 or 5 of the Ozone. And as I'm traveling a lot, sometimes my clients say after 3-4 weeks, "Hey Tim, can you re-export the bounce with the new acapella, or like remove the acapella?" And I'm on a travel somewhere and I don't have access to my beautiful analog gear, unfortunately. So I'm always ready to export anything, and the result actually is really good with Ozone. So I'm stick to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And so your comment there on the side channel, working with the mid-side EQ. So another big discussion that there's very enthusiastic people on both sides of, but especially in the field of electronic music, is do you convert the low end of your master to mono? And some people are adamant that you should be using a mid-side EQ, and on the side channel putting a hard high-pass filter on the side channel to remove any side information from the low end. And some people are very, very adamant that that must be done. I am not in that camp. I think that side channel information in the low frequencies actually can produce a lot of 3D sensation and psychoacoustic width to a master, but that if there's, it of course needs to correlate. So what you said that you're doing in Ozone is you're taking the mid channel, and instead of using a cut filter to high pass it, you're using a shelving filter to bring it down to the right amount, but you're not cutting all of the, so you're not actually fully monoing the low end.
No, it's fully mono in low end until maybe 60, 80 hertz. It's not a huge monoing, and I don't like. I played a little bit trying to see if it works for me. This technique that you are describing with the mid and side like different compression. And I don't like it. And this is one of my philosophies of work with the sound. I think we're losing the coherence between the information mid and side, and we start to have maybe for the first appearance like a nice, bright, white sound, but it's not natural. We are the same, I can say, animals and understanding of the sound of the nature, which is very natural, and we don't have any of those extreme changes on the stereo on the mid. So we need to understand where the sound come from, how it's compressed and everything. So I think it's important to keep the naturality of the sound, like how it is plus minus in the nature, and the correlation of the information mid and side has to stay the same actually and glue the nice natural way together. You can maybe do it on the frequencies which are not important, like on a very very high, like maybe to make your percussion shine a little bit more, compress the stereo signal to get up, but don't do it on the vocals, on the mids, on the parts when you can hear the stereo really nicely. I don't do this, and I don't like the effect that it's doing.
Yeah, fair. Neat. Okay, great. Well, thanks for giving us some insights into your, like, the more details of your production and mixing and mastering, and especially a lot of the mistakes that you were talking about that you see maybe more still talented but more novice producers making.
Yeah.
Those ones they were really interesting to hear. Well, why don't we shift gears for a second? I'd love to hear a bit about, of course, how I met you was looking up the David Guetta songs and seeing who mixed and mastered them. How did you meet David, and how did you start to begin to work together?
Yeah, there is a quite long story. So first of all, I was doing a lot of Abletunes template work. And once Fred Reister is a good friend and a producer that worked with David, wrote me, actually, hey Tim, if you maybe have a time, you can do some production and sound designs for me. So I was very enthusiastic, and I met him personally once as well. So I work a little bit with him, but then we stopped. And once with my manager, we traveled to Los Angeles, and we had to meet some friends and do a little bit of networking. And when we just arrived, we got messages from the friends like, "Sorry, we are leaving. There has been something that they couldn't come to meet us, so we stayed alone." And my manager, he worked in a big label in London, previously, and somehow he got an email of David, and we were just driving in the car and thinking like, what are we gonna do? And we seen that David is in Los Angeles right now, and we just made a email like out of the blue, you know. And in 5 minutes, he just replied to the email like, yeah, I'm working here. Like we can meet. Like maybe you can play us. You can play me some demos. And so that's the story. Well, it was completely a huge surprise. We really didn't expect that we will get any reaction, any reply. So yeah, we met, and I showed to David a lot of works. And actually, I was making templates that are exactly like it's a clones of some productions. Like, and I at this time I had an exact clone of the track with David and Justin Bieber. I can't remember the name of the track well, and that's actually surprised David how close it is. He asked me to open this project in Ableton, and he said like, okay, let's try to work together. And I was invited to a writing camp, and instead of 1 week, I stayed a month or even a little bit more in Los Angeles. And well, that was the beginning of our collaboration.
Wonderful. And you're just about to head out. That's why we did this call at this time, because you're just about to head out on a 3-week writing camp with David later this week, right?
Yeah. In 2 days, I'm going to LA, and this will be a nice writing camp for 3 weeks. So I'm arriving a little bit like at the end of the writing camp, but then we will just take everything that's been done and finalize and work on ideas.
Great. So for those of people out there that don't know, what is a writing camp? And tell me a bit about what the experience is like, just, the things that you can share.
Yeah, sure. Well, writing camp, this is a very fun place when you see, when you have, let's say, 20 producers, 20 singers and songwriters that you bring all together. There is different studios rooms. For example, there is like 2 weeks, and they do groups, and every day they switch people and producers. So you have a chance to every day have a new team and produce new songs. Sometimes having great surprises. Some teams work together; they can create quickly like 3 songs in just 1 day. Some are maybe less productive. This is a very fun way to produce, have new ideas, and well, just doing things like that. So that's mainly the writing camp.
Awesome. And you've been part of how many writing camps so far, would you say?
Not really much. I mean, with David, I think we made maybe 3 or 4 writing camps. I remember actually one in Ibiza. It was really fun because it's like superstars, singers, producers, and really like skilled people being invited, and it feels like you were in a movie with superpower people. So one, there been a girl. She don't need to like write lyrics or something. She can just like go and sing the song right away like this. She made lyrics and melodies without thinking. This is so my superpower is more like sound design. I can really like sculpt exact presets, and in my work, and was actually David found pretty fun. So usually instead of going and click to find the right preset, I just do it from scratch. For me, it's much faster than find one. So this, I think this is a little bit like my superpower. So I can quickly shape the right sound, exact sounding, like find the kick and do things. And everyone in the team is with his own superpower, like in the superhero movie when one is like shutting the lasers, other is strong hands, etc.
Yeah, totally.
So that's good. That's quite a cool experience.
And I like that terminology. Like, I think it's good for any professional in the industry, whether you're an artist or you're an engineer, you're a producer. It's good to know what your superpower is or superpowers, because I think that, there's this small set of things that you can be or are the best or one of the best in the world at. And I think that rather than trying to focus on and work on elevating our weaknesses, that if we instead focus on developing our strengths, because I think, people have this mindset of, oh, you need to be this well-rounded person to be successful. And I don't think that at all. I think if I spent all my time working on the things that I'm not good at, on my weaknesses, I would work out to be this kind of average, non-exceptional person.
Yeah,
Whereas I think if a person identifies and has clarity on what their strengths are and then puts the majority of their energy towards elevating and accentuating their strongest aspects of themselves, then they can become truly world class and niched into this, and then they can
yeah,
fit into a puzzle like you're just talking about with other people and have this synergistic effect where they're amalgamating their talents and their skills to be able to create something together. I think that's
absolutely.
really a really powerful point.
That's take a little time to understand as well, because when you're learning, you're trying to understand what styles you like, what you want. The interesting thing that popped in my mind right now, maybe like 20 years ago when I was starting to doing producing, and I like to produce like completely different varieties of styles. Like I have trip hop, house, some meditative tracks, some jazzy things. So, and I made a lot of tracks like that, and then I started looking for a label. Well, I was very young, naive, and didn't really know how it works, like complete rock and roll. So I was looking for a label, and everyone saying, "Sorry, your album sounds like a compilation just of different tracks. It's like different producers there." And I feel that is my weakness point. So I can really, well, I wasn't able at this time to really produce 12 tracks in one style. It was super boring for me, and I was enjoying doing all those styles and actually doing them pretty good. And for quite some time, I was thinking this is my weak point. But at the end, right now, I understand that I can feel very different styles. I can mix country and EDM songs, and I can understand, feel them, and I still worked all this time and learned the way. So I was always interested by very different styles, learning different techniques from acoustic to EDM and crazy dubstep things. And now I understand that I think it was a strong point, but just it took time to like put all the things together, understand yourself, have some experience, like bad experience, good experience, and at the end, like shape yourself the way of knowing yourself. Well, that's life philosophy as well.
Isn't it? Yeah, 100%. So great. And then I'm curious about, and one of the questions that had actually come up from our Discord server was people wanted to know about what the workflow is like with David. So what does it look like after or during these writing camps, the finalization process, the mixing and mastering? Do you meet in person? Is it remote? Is it not in real time? Like, yeah, take us inside that process.
Yeah. So usually, I start to work in the middle of the creation of the song. So, for example, there been a writing camp. Two songs are really amazing, and it has already some production, but more like a style production. So David usually spend himself the time, so he's running and going to all those camp. He giving ideas, some references. So he's deeply involved in the creation, production, and artistic production, giving the the energy as well. So yeah, David is he's like fire starter. He can really give the inspiration just by some comments. And when I get the demo, it's usually a very well produced a cappella already, like release ready a cappella. Some production already in the style and the vibe that we want. But then we need to maybe change a little bit the melody. We need to redo drums because, for example, the producer is not specifically in the house music. He don't know all the trends. So we need to make this house drums really sound like house music or EDM. That kick, also very important, is always find the balance and compromise in the tracks to keep them pop and playable on a radio or Spotify. At the same time, he can just take it how it is and play on a festival, and it will still work. So this is always a little bit of the challenge because it's a music production challenge to put everything the way so it's nice to hear in the car, and also it's kicking on the dance floor, and at the same time the mix and mastering challenge. So it's really find that last borderline to not being too aggressive and stay musical and not being too soft. So yeah, and then we work together with David, or like I'm doing the finalizing, mix mastering, maybe like a few effects details, and that's it. And then he approve or not.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I definitely feel you on that challenge of needing to have a mix and master that sounds correct on streaming sites and in environments like the car or on Apple AirPods or whatever. But it also, if it's EDM or bass music or dance music, it needs to sound really good on these big PAs, and those playback systems are really different from each other. And then there's of course the loudness thing, and in DJ sets also, because you're working on a lot of David's music, but you're not working on all of David's music. You also need to reference his catalog to make sure that there's consistency there. So yeah, could you tell us a bit more about that process and how you make sure that, if he's playing songs in his DJ sets, that you have that consistency, and also how you deal with the challenge of having something sound good on Spotify where it's going to be turned down because it's loud, versus having something that sounds really good and clean on a PA.
Yeah, here you can divide maybe a little bit the process on just numbers, how loud you are, the LUFS, and also how do you perceive the loudness. For example, there is another, I think, little point about the problem that young producers can do. So there is a quite interesting topic about the resonances. Like you have to cut the resonance frequencies to make your sound like pleasant and nice to hear. But I see usually people overdo it, and then they lose actually the feeling of the presence. So the sound is started being very like just soft and nice. But when you do all your treatments for the whole track like this, you will have like the volumes, you can press more, you start to saturate, but sound, the perception of the sound is like it's not loud enough. You hear exactly the same LUFS track as a reference, but yours feels like it's -5 or -10 dBs. So I'm losing a little bit the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's hone in on that for a sec, because it's something we talked about before, and I think because we were talking a bit about these resonance suppression tools like the stabilizer in Isotope Ozone, and about Soothe and things like that. And I've started to use them a little bit, but I don't trust them because I have an acoustics background, and I know that there could be a resonance that I would call a bad resonance because it was recorded in a vocal booth, and that vocal booth has room modes that will cause a certain frequency that wasn't necessarily popping out to pop out. And if it's from a recording issue, you would want to suppress that resonance. However, maybe the resonance is from a saxophone or a guitar, and that's just the natural frequency that plucks out because it's one of the fundamentals or the harmonics. And if you suppress that with resonance, it's going to take the life out of that instrument. And so I did this test where I took Grammy winners. So I'm a huge fan also of Luca Pratolesi and his work that he does with Skrillex and Diplo. And the song that he won the 2024 Grammy for was Rumble, with Skrillex and Flodan and Fred again.
Yeah.
And I took that mix and I ran it through Soothe. And so if that mix is perfect, Soothe shouldn't be doing anything, theoretically. That's what I thought. But it just mangled the mix and made it sound absolute rubbish. And so you can't just slap these resonance suppression tools on and just call it a day and then be like, okay, it's doing its job, clearly. So yeah, I think you make a really good point there.
Yeah, well, I will speak maybe a little bit about the Soothe and Gulfos plugins. I think this is an amazing tool, but of course it's not putting just like boom like this and turn the button, like make my mix sound great.
If that was the case, you and I wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely, if you put it just like this and you put like, let's go for 50%, it will kill all the resonant frequencies, and the sound will be flat, lifeless, and really boring. But it's really like time saver for me in for example, one case that can explain very good how you can use it. Again, in that complicated mix that I just did a few days ago, the vocals been already treated pretty heavily and didn't sound very good. And especially in, I think, about 4,000 hertz, there was a lot of different resonance frequencies, I think, maybe because of the reverb, some maybe EQs, or maybe like that was a mess. And do it like surgical little cuts. Maybe it helps just for the chorus part, but then in the verse part, there's a different notes because the girl sings lower. So I took the Gulfos. I just choose that little piece of the frequencies that being difficult to work with, and it was always very aggressive. And then I just start to tune a little bit how much of the effect of Gulfos I want to do just on this specific area, and it did an amazing job. Actually, just remove the bad frequencies, but keep the main and the most important frequencies of the vocals how it is, maybe with a slight compression. And this is really a huge time saver, and maybe I won't even be able to do as good result just with a regular compressor or even multiband compressor. So I use it like this. Same for mastering sometimes. Well, you have to be very careful with the mastering, but you can put it after your compression. Also on the problematic frequencies, usually it's high frequencies that I use. For example, I made one mix master and I didn't have enough very, very like last high frequencies on the percussion shakers, like this nice, very noisy, very last high frequencies. And I just took this very last corner of them and I turn it and it's choose because it's analyze every the whole spectrum, I think, and it just add extra only on this specific area that I hear that missed, and it just did it. I don't need to do anything. So it's like very nice automation tool that help you to solve problems, but you have to hear well. So if your room acoustic or your headphones bad and you don't trust and you start to play with this tool, I think you will create more problems than solve.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's light touch, don't be too heavy-handed. And in that case, with that particular problematic mix, am I correct in saying that you were not using the Gullfoss on your master? You were using it on the vocal group or something specifically? Yeah, so you were using it in the mix. And that's always going to give you better results. Anything you have to do on the master is going to be so much more audible, because if it's suppressing a resonance in the vocal, it'll also be suppressing that same frequency in all your other instrumentation too.
Yeah, of course. Don't repeat the same effect. Yeah. Also, interesting case that you can use, as it's removing the strong frequencies and make your sound more soft and pleasant. For example, you have two layers of similar sound. For example, you just got the stems, you have to mix them, and you have to choose which layer is most important. Like, for example, the guitar needs to be doing this beautiful solo, and there is another synth that playing the same frequencies, and it just needs to be a little bit in the background or making this a little stereo feel. You can put the Gullfoss on that second layer, which is less important. That way it will make it more smooth, a little bit more in the background, and the guitar will stand out. So that's also one of the way.
Love that. Yeah, those little tricks. Thanks for sharing those, by the way. I know some of those are kind of like trade secrets and things that you develop over time, and it's really great to have an engineer and a producer like yourself who's willing to share some of those with to help all the rest of us out. So that's awesome. I really appreciate you doing that, Timofey.
No problem. And I really honestly think the people who are talented and really work hard, they will find all those secrets themselves.
Well, it definitely helps to point out what they are so that people can try them out too. So, well, you mentioned something a couple minutes ago, which is a good segue into our next topic I wanted to go into, which is you talked about you need to be able to hear. You need to be able to hear correctly in your acoustical environment or in your headphones. And you are sitting in a very beautiful studio, my friend. And I know this is a studio that's in your home, which is awesome. So you have not very much of a commute to go to work, which is great. And it's a great room. So could you tell us a bit about your studio and how you had it built and what the room is like and all of that?
Yeah. So the room is not very big, and it was a little bit of the challenge to make it, and it's not perfectly square. Not squared. How to say?
Rectangular.
It's not perfectly rectangular. So I had an engineer, professional engineer who creating studios, cinemas, like big commercial spaces. So he made it's called room in a room. So I have an extra room made of the materials that block the frequencies, and also the materials are placed in the right space. He calculate every path of where we have to catch the low frequencies, the high frequencies, where I want my speakers. It's called the floating floor, so I don't have any direct connection with the structure of the building. So I'm not making resonating like, I don't know, one piece of the building, and in the bathroom 2 floors down we will hear the bass line.
I mean, maybe they might like that. You're making good music. Maybe you should sell tickets to your bathroom for a little rave in the bathroom.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you. My wife will like it. So that was a very big and expensive and long work to make the studio, but it's really sounds good. It's a little bit more dry than the most of studios I visit and I hear and I work. And this is maybe the driest studio I've ever had. But this, I think it's even better point because of this dry studio and very well done. I made a huge revelation and a lift understanding the role of the reverb, room reverb, in the whole mix and mastering process, understanding the low frequencies. Before the studio, I spent hours to tweak the low end bass, how to make my kick drum work with the bass. And next day I come and I like, for example, my mix. Next day I come with fresh ear. I don't like it anymore. It was a real huge time waste, and I couldn't understand it. Also, like buying plugins. This plugin you have to buy it because it makes this nice distortion on the lows, and then it will work great on your kick. Nothing worked like that. The only thing you have to invest is the treatment of your room, maybe a good preamp and headphones. If you don't have a possibility, for example, to do a nice sounding isolation and everything, and the treatment of your room. So yeah, and really, I had this advice from a lot of producers and professionals for many years, but I couldn't have the real studio. But I was thinking, no, it's okay. I have headphones, and I will just glue a few panels on the walls, and it will be okay. But it's a huge difference. Really, like save your money on the plugins and invest in the room treatment and acoustics.
Yeah, you make a extremely good point. I can't emphasize that enough because I'm one of a small number of people on YouTube that talks about the kind of uninteresting topic of acoustics and building studios. And I do a lot of videos on about a bunch of different topics. And when I do a video about plugins, it'll get a ton of views. If I talk about how to build your own acoustic modules, like in my studio, there's less attention, and I think that's a representation of the fact that acoustics is not a sexy topic. People don't, I think, understand, one, what is necessary to create a truly good room, and just putting these prefabricated panels up on your walls is not going to create an acoustical environment where you can hear the low end correctly, like you've said.
Yeah.
And it's also just something where people like fancy speakers, and they like the appeal of a new, neat-looking plugin interface. But doing acoustics is kind of like, yeah, it takes some money and it's hard work. But especially if you're a professional in the industry, I think that the difference that you can feel in a room that is really dry, where you can hear the bass correctly, is night and day. And like you said, I had the same problems. I was second guessing all of my decisions in the low end. I was working really hard on it. And one of the reasons why professionals invest into properly done studios that might cost $50,000 or $100,000 or more, some of the studios are $2 million, $3 million, is because it allows you to work and make decisions more quickly. You're not second guessing your every move. What needs to be done in the mix becomes obvious. And so oftentimes, whenever I can, I get my clients to come into my room with me, and I show them, this is the before, this is the after. And they're like, I can hear it. I'm like, things like turning the kick up by 1 dB. They're like, in my room, I could never hear that that's what needed to be done. And I'm like, that is why, that's the payoff of this room, is I have well-developed ears, but I don't necessarily think I'm exceptional in what I can hear. Like, I have good ear training, but I think that the things that I'm hearing and the decisions that I'm making can also be relatively obvious to somebody with less training because of the room. The room shows you what needs to be done and allows you to work more quickly.
Exactly. I can do a little comparison picture. For example, imagine you are a painter and your room is dark, and you have a red lamp in the corner with some shadows and something, and then you have to paint a beautiful green forest. But because of the slight problems in your room, I guess you will paint something more in the blue, and then we'll go outside and look at what you done on the normal daylight. The colors are distorted. This is a little bit the effect when you have a lot of reflections from the room. You're for example, I made the same mistake. So those focals behind me, I bought them maybe 7 years ago, something like that. And this time I was living in another house, and the wall just behind been resonating on some, I think, 150 hertz or something. This boomy frequencies, like 100, 150. and I already had those expensive, very nice speakers, but the quality is really night and day. So it's extremely important. It's like almost, if you consider yourself being a mix mastering engineer, you have to be you have to build a studio.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, it's an investment, but one of the things that I try and empower people with is the DIY. So I show people how you can build, like one of those modules back there behind me. I have on my YouTube channel a video about how to build one of those, and it's $260 or $250 US to build one of those yourself. That's not expensive. I mean, that's the price of a plugin. And my room is filled with those types of modules, right? So it's not that expensive if you're willing to just like look at some videos, and you can kind of build a room yourself that's going to be pretty good. You don't necessarily have to hire an engineer if you don't have the budget for that. But of course, if you can, it's good to work with a professional, because you have a lot of treatment in your room. Like you've got those vertical and horizontal slats. You've got obviously some diffusion going on, and you've got it's hard to tell because your walls are probably wrapped in acoustic fabric, right? But there's probably some quite deep porous absorption treatment that's there that's helping with the bass.
Yeah, I think it's something like this distance between the wall, like new wall, and the real wall. So
so a foot or 2 feet or something like that, half a meter, which is really what's needed to help with the bass. And if you have less than that, then you kind of deal with the mids and highs, and those get dry. But the bass doesn't. The bass needs that depth of treatment. And you said that your room is one of the drier, or maybe the driest room that you've been in. And that's also the same thing with my room. It's very, very, very dry. And because I work on EDM and hip hop and bass music, I needed to have a room that's very dry to get the bass under control. And because the bass is under control in my room and I can hear it correctly, I'm able to work better in those genres than a room that had a bit more liveliness or live sound. And like with anything, you just adapt to it. You learn the room, you get used to what things sound like correctly in there. And what was your process like in learning your room? And then also I see that you've got those new Genelec 8351s behind you. You got those in the last month, and you're kind of learning those too. So what's your process like for learning a new studio environment and new monitoring system?
So why I have the Genelec right now. Before I had the Adams A7X. But I used them only like to start making music, especially it was more like musical instruments. So I never mixed mastered with it, and they sound beautiful when you start a production. You can like take a wrong kick and doing pretty bad decisions, but it's kind of cool. Everything grooves well, and this is a good thing, especially when you start working on a when you in a creative process. And the vocals are very it's like the white lamp in the hospital. It's like so bright and white and honest with you, so you see like, oh my god, this is so dry and ugly, and usually it can kill a little bit the vibe, and while you're trying to create something cool. So it's nice to have the both, but as my vocals start to being quite old, I'm afraid that if one day something happened with them, I need like a second pair that I can also work like a mix and mastering, do a mix mastering work as well. So I start to looking kind of nice replacement for Adams. And for the vocals, and I found those Genelecs that has three ways. Yeah, so sub, mid, and high, everything in one, like amazing technologies. And the sound is actually very beautiful, amazing. Is also great to start, especially like start new production is amazing. But for now, I didn't learn them well enough. And a few mastering that I tried to do with, I don't really like the result, to be honest. When I switch to vocals, I hear so much problems and I start to fix. And I work sometimes on the both, so it's very good to compare. I know that on some tracks, I can undermix a little bit the vocals, and they sound much quieter on the Genelec. So I'm looking for the middle. So for now, I work on the two, especially. I can start with Genelec just for creative process. Then I produce everything on vocals to be sure I don't mess with frequencies and I do everything right. And then at the end, when I really like at the last stage of mixing mastering and the volume equilibration, like how loud is my guitar, drums, vocals. So I switch between.
Okay.
And I have a SPL switch. I have 4 different speakers actually. So one is so the first main is the vocals, then Genelec here, then a pair of like the cheapest. There is a white one. It's creative, like just from a grocery store. Speakers for $50, and it's amazing actually because they don't have any internal frequency balance. Like the latest Bluetooth speakers, they tend to make the frequency range different regarding like how loud you play the volume.
Right.
So there's like zero smart things in it, and it's quite good to understand how it will sound from a small speaker or from your phone. So and I have also small focals. I don't remember the model, but they placed completely different. So unfortunately, you can see.
Oh yeah, we can see them over there. That's where your synth station is.
Yeah, it's like So they are. Sometimes I switch to those just also to have sound a little bit from a different position in the room.
So a big question that comes up for a lot of people is, do you or should you use a subwoofer? And if you are going to use a subwoofer, where do you place it? And do you use stereo subs or a mono sub? And I know we had this conversation kind of offline when we were talking about, I was asking you if you had any subs in your system, and you don't, because you're using 3-way, full range, large monitors that have that type of frequency extension. Could you talk a bit about your experience when you were using subs in your previous studios, and what that was like for you, and then why you've chosen to go with the full range monitors that you have?
Yes, so that's exactly the path that I've been through, looking for that sound, be able to do the best of my studio. So I was switching between different setups, and once I bought, actually it was a subwoofer from Adam A7X. I don't remember the model of the subwoofer. Well, it's a pretty big one. And it was a constant struggle and paranoia if I made the right volume level, and I couldn't really understand how to say the right balance. It's really difficult to find. And well, my room been not very well done in my previous studio, and in this one even I didn't really like it because the sound, it's already has to be mono, so you need to tweak the right crossfade moment. So it put everything in mono, and what I especially don't like, your subs comes from a different position in your room. So you have speakers left and right, the sub in the middle, usually on the floor. It vibrates with the floor, and I think it's a complete mess. That's why I then switched to the focals, because they have 3-way speakers, and everything is calibrated inside. You can do like small tweaks on the equalizer. They have, which is actually cool on this model, they have a little equalizer behind that you can add a little bit more lows or reduce. And for me, that's the setup that worked the best. So the subwoofer I have right now behind me is turned off for a couple of years now.
You can use it as a footrest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people think that, no, instead of building a proper studio, I'm just going to spend more money and get a sub. And with the sub, that's somehow magically going to let me hear the low end with resolution. And when you have a studio that doesn't have the low end accurate and under control, and you have all these resonances, and then you add a sub to that, it's just making a bad problem worse. And I'd always worked before I had this room, in studios that, I'd done some treatment to, and some were better than others, but it was always a room that didn't really have the proper low frequency control. And I had a monitoring system with a sub, and I never, ever got it to the point where I felt like I could trust it. And I always felt like I was second guessing my decisions. And I didn't feel like working with the sub really did anything extra for me. I felt like I was actually better on just the top monitors, even if they didn't have full low end extension. And I can definitely corroborate what you've said there, in that when you have a sub that's coming from a different physical location, I mean, people say to me sometimes, they say, well, you can't perceive where low frequencies are coming from. And that is not true. You can spatially locate sub. And I don't care what anybody says. I can hear it in my room. I can hear sub information that's in stereo. It's obvious in this room. And the people that are saying that you can't, I think, just have not ever been in a studio with proper full range monitoring. So yeah, I'm with you there in that I am not a fan of subs unless they were like properly built right below your speakers and in stereo and done by an acoustician.
Yeah, I think there is absolutely a way, if you do exact calculation with the project of your studio and you find the perfect placing and everything is aligned. I'm not saying subs, it's no way and never gonna work, but it's much more difficult to work with the subs than without.
Yeah, agreed. So let's talk about your mobile setup, because you had alluded to the fact earlier that sometimes you're working on the road and might be in a hotel room or something, and you have a client that says, "Hey, can you send me this version of the mix or the master with a new vocal in it," or something like that. What does your mobile setup look like? I'm assuming you're working on headphones, and what do you do when you're on the road?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I even found that sound card, took it from my backpack. So my really favorite headphones right now, it's not the most expensive, but really works really good for me, as the DT9090.
Yep,
and
the Bayer
sound
Dynamics.
card, Bayer Dynamics, yes. And the sound card is the Mark 1 by SPL. So it has a very, very good preamp inside, especially for those headphones. It's very important. And I have a very similar picture that I have in my studio. So the sound is quite same brightness, and I have the lows and everything in this. So I feel almost like in my studio. And I can do everything. Well, of course, it's not the best. I don't really like to work in the headphones. My ears are getting tired quicker, and anyway, the production I do only on the headphones sounds different, and then I have to rework and correct it everything in the studio. But it's definitely a setup that I can produce fully workable, finished production. And I had already a few situation. For example, the remix I was finishing with David for Satisfaction, Benny Benassi. There'd been a rework of it. So it was a lot of mixing, mastering work being made only this to play it in Las Vegas. And it's worked pretty good. And while I finished it, mixed it and mastered in my studio at home.
Nice. Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think the person that people talk about a lot when it comes to mixing in headphones is Andrew Sheps, because he has been a big proponent of saying that I work in headphones. And I listened to, or I read an interview with him about how he learned headphones to the point where he felt like he could get good results and that he could trust his results. And what he said is that he found headphones that sounded as similar as possible to his actual studio, because a lot of headphones don't. Like when I put on, like I think I have 8 sets of headphones that are all, I have a bunch of the Odyssey ones, I have Virums, I have Sennheisers, I have Audio Technicas, and like very few of those, even though they're all mostly are very professional and expensive headphones, almost none of them sound like my studio. They sound really different. They're brighter or darker. The bass is higher or lower. Most of the time, the bass is lower. And but then some of them, these ones, particularly the LCD5s, sound very similar to my Room and my Neumanns, and so that's why I mostly use these. But then with Andrew Scheps, he was talking about also, like you were talking about with learning the Genelecs, right? Is he said he would work on the headphones up to a point, and then he would take them off and he'd listen on his monitors and he'd say, oh, I hear a whole bunch of things that I did wrong. And then he'd go back and he'd make the corrections on the headphones. He wouldn't make the corrections on the monitors. He'd go back to the headphones and be like, okay, let's get it. Okay, now I think I've got that. He'd take the headphones off. He'd listen on the monitors. He'd be like, okay, it's closer. And there's this process of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth over months before he felt like he was actually getting good results. But a lot of people misunderstand that and they simplify it. And these young producers that'll say, I can mix in headphones. Andrew Scheps can mix in headphones. He mixes in headphones, so I can do it. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. First of all, you're not Andrew Scheps. Like, have you seen the gray hair? This guy's been doing it for decades, right? He's got an ear that he's hearing things that you're not hearing. And then even him, it took this process of working at it, and going back and forth between a really good studio where he could hear what was going on and then going back and learning them. But people simplify that sometimes and they just say, oh yeah, I can just get this pair of $3,000 headphones, put them on, and I can mix as good as Andrew Scheps. And I think that it's good to understand the process that went in, the hard work that went in.
Yeah. So I guess, I was lucky to find those, and they sound very similar to my studio. And actually, I like how it sounds because also I tested a lot of headphones. Sometimes the low is really huge. I don't know why. Some headphones, and actually, I think the most of them, it's actually I missed the low, and as I'm doing a lot of bass music, the lows and the exact like right, and I feel like it's quite linear, the lows, how it's sounds with this headphones. So it's not like I have more of 80 hertz and I hear very good like lows but not the kicks. So it's very nice curve there, and it works really good for me.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's one thing I've learned by working with companies like Odyssey, it's that different headphones have very different tunings. And some of them are tuned more for like a hi-fi listener, like an audiophile listener, and they're not really tuned for an engineer, because what an engineer like you and me want to hear is accuracy. And what an audiophile or recreational listener, hi-fi listener might want to hear is actually for them to flatter the sound, to make it sound better than it really is. And you made a good point a little while ago about your focals. When you put your mix on the focals, it's like that bright white hospital fluorescent light, and it shines and exposes all of the flaws so that you can hear them. And that is the difference between what an engineer wants and what a recreational listener wants, because a recreational listener wants the speaker to make this music sound better than it is, or at least sound as good as it is, whereas the reference monitoring systems are designed to show you the flaws.
Yeah. And it's, I can say, like, I maybe almost never 100% happy with the mix and master that I do. But I know it's good, but it's always something that I feel like you can even do a little bit more work with. When I switch to like headphones or Genelec or whatever, a phone or car stereo, it's great. But vocals, they are really like telling you the truth, like how it is. Also very important, not only the frequency range, but I'll explain that dynamic that they can catch. For example, on Adams, when I was choosing the kicks, sometimes, okay, this one is good. Then I switch to vocals and I hear a little clipping. So it's like very high picks. For example, if your kick been a little bit too limited, and there is you cut those nice sinus wave and became more square. Some of the speakers, because they are slow and dynamic, they can't play all those very small details in the high range. The vocals can. So your kick will tell you everything how it sounds on the vocals.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you made about the speakers that always make you really work for it. You know, if you always want to be doing a little bit better because they're like, yeah, this is good and it sounds good on the other systems. But when you listen on your main monitors, you're like, it could be a little bit better. And I think that's also, that's part of being a human being. And it's like that perfectionism aspect that we all have to deal with. I think everybody at some point deals with some degree of perfectionism. If you're working as a professional, you always want your work to be better. You always want to be doing the best that you can. And of course, you have to turn projects out. You have to get deadlines done for clients. So you can never just fuss with something forever. But I think that's part of what drives us to get, to push beyond and to reach for our true potential, is that knowing that we can do just a little bit better and we're not there yet and there's something else to reach for.
Yeah.
So speaking to that, what are you reaching for in your career? Obviously, you've gotten a huge amount of success so far with what you're doing. You've been able to carve out an excellent reputation for yourself. You're working with incredible artists. Obviously, you work with many other artists than David. What do you have planned for yourself? What are you trying to develop in terms of skills, and what goals do you hold for yourself over the next few years, say?
Well, to be honest, I understand that happiness as the process is not like the goal somewhere. So I try to enjoy already what I have, and I'm completely conscious about everything that's happening around me. One of the things that I think it's fun to learn a little bit more technical about the mix and mastering, go more in like mathematics and also like psychoacoustic, which is really interesting. For example, maybe not everyone knows that we perceive the frequency range not the same way regarding the volume. So, for example, if you mix quietly, you will hear the frequency. It's like you change your frequency range understanding. And this is like super important. How you make your mix sound louder without going just in the numbers louder. And also make a collection of ear candy tricks, like something that every human will perceive like a nice, sweet sound. Like there's a few of them that always works. Like a plucky guitar. Everyone likes plucky guitar. So, and all those things also in the mix mastering, there's a few. So I feel this is the field that have a lot of experiments, and it's just fun to do and try. Also, I like to. Right now, I'm working on a little startup. I'm doing hardware. It's a MIDI controller that made for the rack. So it's 90-inch format rack MIDI controller, which don't exist anywhere for some reason. So I really like to work in the rack. I like when my setup is clean. I have my tools. I'm not big fan of right now like running after some new hype little plugins or things. I really learn what I have right now, and I'm very quick because of this, and I don't need to like turn around with new knobs or read the user manual or something. And the controller is also reflect a little bit my philosophy. It's simplicity is the key. So there is only 9 knobs. There is not a fancy switches and different things. It's just 9 knobs that works very good. They have a nice resistance. So this little project is really a big passion for me because I never could even imagine that I will start my own hardware production. So it's really something for me very nice to think of. So this is a very cool thing. Also, I'm developing another service for audio sharing. So we just, because I'm working a lot of with producers, singers, or sending mix masters or just a quick demos. And usually I use the Dropbox, but it's always a struggle as well when you want to find a file like 2 weeks later. It's a bunch of different files, documents, and everything. So I made a little service sound link that you can just drag and drop the file, get the short link directly, and send it to your client or your friend or singer demo, etc. So it's still in the music, but it's a little bit different, and I really like to just unglobe all the music professional tools and things to do. And the music, I'm really happy where I am right now, and I hope I will continue the same way, just going further and doing, and maybe one day have a Grammy. That's also a nice goal.
Oh, great. Yeah, I like what you said about enjoying the journey and being thankful for what you have. Indicates some wisdom on your end. You know, you eventually learn that you spend almost all of your time in the journey and very little of your time actually at the destination or destinations, that you better enjoy the journey if you want to be a happy and fulfilled person. And I think it's also really neat how you're branching out beyond, like you've developed this aptitude for the production and mixing and mastering, but then you've also figured out these other tangents that you can pull on, like the MIDI controller and then the file sharing service. That's really neat. I'm curious about the MIDI controller. So you're 9 knobs, so very simplistic, and I love your philosophy around minimalism. I think the less complex we can make this process, the more quickly we'll be able to work, the more enjoyment that we'll have in the process, and the better results we'll get. What would you imagine mapping those knobs out to if I was somebody using your MIDI controller?
So 9 knobs, that's really, I don't need more in my process usually. So it's interesting to use, for example, with the input level that goes in your mastering chain. You can put it in a compressor output signal. And when you are already working a little bit in a stage of limiting, I can put a little bit more, and there is a mode in this controller called precision. So you have the velocity of how it reacts to the turn is much more how to say, like it's much slower. So you have to turn 5 times the whole knob to get from 0 to 128, like from this velocity parameter. So you can really like get that extra 0.7 dB that you want to add a little bit in your saturation or your clipper or on the limiter. Also, like the filter, for example, is more for music goals. I have a filter on my synth, and I want to play something wild. For example, in the progressive house music, there is always like a filter on the bass line that evolves, that opens a little bit, so it makes that nice hypnotic feel that there is always something happening. And instead of doing with the mouse, which gets pretty predictable and linear, it's nice to do it with the hand, so it gives more like human touch to it. So that's the main implications. Right now I'm working to create like the perfect mapping plan for the mix mastering, sort of a like minimum tools that I use in every mastering. For example, this compression, output signal, how much I limit the signal, and maybe even like some frequencies tweaks, because I see in my mastering channel usually I have quite similar tweaks and fine tunings. So that's mostly the thing. But I know, for example, I have a friend who have a huge analog studio, and he have a whole wall on the side. And for example, if you want to play with one of the hardware unit, he can install the MIDI 9 there and adjust some software parameters without going back to the computer and tweak it there. So you can map things directly to the rack stand.
Right on. Yeah, those are really neat applications. So you said you're going to be doing a Kickstarter where people could learn more about this. How can people find out and follow the progress of your controller development?
Sure. So there is already a website, soundrog.com. So that's the name of the company, Soundrog, and the device called MIDI 9. On the website, you can subscribe to the mailing list and you will get all the news. Normally, while we're working really hard, but there is a lot of hardware thing that we're evolving and also marketing things that taking time. So normally in 1 month, we're launching the Kickstart. And yeah, it will be nice to to get enough funding to start the mass production, sell it, and we have already ideas for other devices, also for simplify the workflow in the studio, especially with the rack format workflow in the studios. Because it's actually the tools that I create for me for my workflow, and I don't find those tools on the market, and I see other people's think the same. So I'm saying, like, why not make them?
I think some of the best software and hardware and tools in general come out of that exact predicament of you find a particular way of working you really enjoy and you find benefits in that workflow, but some aspect of that process is like a hacked together piece that you had to build for yourself, and then if it solves your problem, it's likely that a lot of other people are going to have a similar problem, and then it becomes a product that you can then stand behind, and that's great. I really love that, and clearly you have the entrepreneurial spirit that makes you want to build things and do that. And
I like to create.
Awesome. So I'm just looking over my questions here, and we had some questions from some of the guys in our Discord server. And in our last few minutes that we have together, I just wanted to kind of go over some of those. There's a few technical questions, and I think that with house music specifically, a lot of the stuff that you're doing in EDM, that concept of sidechain ducking is so fundamental to the sound. And I'd like to talk a bit about how you're doing that. I know you work inside of Ableton Live. What routings are you using? What tools? And to the extent that you can remember them, what types of settings are you using? Because there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and I think some ways work better than others.
Yeah, well, mine will be very simple. I'm very used to the tools that we have in Ableton Live. So in my situation, I like almost always use just a compressor with a sidechain, but instead of sending the kick to the sidechain as a trigger, I use a sine wave or the noise, because it's a constant and right away signal without the slow attack or different dynamics. And I do a MIDI track with the noise, and which I can manipulate the late of this trigger signal. That way, if I put the compressor with the same trigger on all my tracks, I don't need to tweak every compressor separately to have different release and depth. I can do it just on my trigger track. It's super simple and it works very, very good. In 99% of cases, I use this. Sometimes I use Kickstarter, but it's mostly because I get the project from someone else and they've been already inside. And I use the same to keep consistency, actually, to not playing too much with different compressions. Also, like a nice advice, I think, for producers, it's instead of doing separate sidechain on every track, group all of them, and on this group put the sidechain, a little bit of compressor, and the sidechain on top. That will change the picture and be much more groovy and punchy. So,
And what types of sounds are you grouping in that are getting ducked?
yeah, it can be a little bit different depth and grade. Baseline has to be sidechained pretty hard. Then if you have instruments that more like chords, piano, things that playing behind pads, and all those things, you can sidechain it almost the same as a bass, but it's regarding the style you're working on. For example, if it's a pop track, of course, the sidechain needs to be softer, not going too much. Otherwise, it will be too pumpy. And for a pleasant and soft experience of listening, it can do too much for your ears, especially, for example, when you drive in a car and you just want to arrive at your work in a nice mood, and then you have too much pump, it will tire your brain. So,
or if you're in your
the pop
downstairs
music,
bathroom and your wife's listening when you're working on a song.
yeah. And on the lead, sometimes I do even less because it's something that play melodies have to stand out a little bit from the mix, so you understand, and you try to, with a simple how to say, techniques, to show actually to the brain which is the important things, who is the main hero in your track. Because imagine you have 2 or 3 melodies playing at the same time at the same volume, it will be very disturbing experience. So the same with the sidechain and the mixing philosophy. That's important to play with the brain perception of the music.
Oh, that's great. That's a great workflow. I love the concept of using a MIDI trigger that is not the kick, because like you said, each kick drum will have a different envelope to it. Some of them don't actually attack right away, and some of them are longer and have a particular envelope to the tail of the kick that you might not want on the envelope of your ducking process. And if you trigger with a noise burst, or like you're saying, like a sine wave or noise burst from a synth, and then you have the ability to be able to control the length of that noise burst to control the length of the ducking. That gives you a lot of control, which is really great. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Another question that I had was talking about loudness, and a lot of the stuff that you're working on is with David is in the range of like -8, -7 LUFS integrated. It's loud. But it's not like totally crushed. Like there's still punch, there's still some dynamics, and it sounds good to me, which is what I was pointing out in the Isotope video. And then there are other genres and artists, a lot of drum and bass, a lot of dubstep, and then the new genre funk, where stuff is like -2, -3, -4. What do you think about those types of masters? And what are you hearing in them? Do those sound good to you? Do you think it's possible to sound good in those ranges? Or if they're not sounding good to you, in what ways are they not sounding good? And why do you think?
Yeah, I have a question. Did you ever measure the LUFS in Skrillex tracks?
All the time. Yeah. And so his older stuff.
What is it?
His older stuff, like Bangarang and in one of his first, albums, and he won Grammys for some of these. And I think Andrew Gold was his mastering engineer there, and he actually has the projects, some of them up on YouTube, and they show the output of the mastering chain, and they're -4. But all of his newer stuff, it's been interesting to watch the evolution of his music, because once he started working with Luca Pretelesi, and I looked at the 2024 Grammy winner Rumble, it is way more dynamic.
Really?
Way more dynamic. I think in the drops, the heaviest sections, if you just isolate those and then run an integrated LUFS calculation, they're in the range of -6, maybe -6.3. Actually, I mean, and then the full song integrated LUFS is actually less, right? So, and those to me sound amazing. Yeah. But his older stuff was definitely more crushed.
Yeah, for sure. But the last album, I noticed in Skrillex work and like the way he composed music, it's a lot of elements, but they goes one after another. It feels like there is a bass, snare, vocal chop things, and there's almost never, let's say, 5, 6 layers at the same time. So I think in the Skrillex case, that's maybe one of the thing why it can be so dynamic, sounding nice, and not crushing. So, and that's just the way of that how you build your waveform. For example, in the funk music, this is a different situation. There's a lot of things together, and they this insane limits that is almost crushing everything together. That's a thing that you can do in your mix mastering. So once I get the templates to do for Abletunes actually in the funk, and I was like, okay, well, it sounds complete trash, but I understand and I respect this is a part of the style. This is a part of the sounding. This is how it has to sound. And but I will do it the right way, like the like more academic way. And it was quite interesting to see that I really have to go crazy on the mastering chain, limit everything, add saturation, or like take under control and fake actually this little oversaturation on the master using groups and things. But the only and the right way it's oversaturate everything on the master, because all your it's a part of the style. It's like impressionism when you just take a thing and you throw on the wall and then it's a picture. You can't do it like piece by piece with your little. So it has to be part of the creation and of the style. So I'm not judging it with the LUFS. I think this just like a hard metal something that's this picture is a part of the art, and that's okay. I have nothing, uh, um, no disrespect or something. I think this is just cool. This is a part of how kids make their tracks just with a pair of AirPods and a computer.
Yeah. So what about genres like, for example, like funk is new and it's always been like that, unapologetic.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, like that. It's just that's the sound. It's crushed,
Yeah.
but it's always been crushed since the beginning. But then you take other genres that have been around for a lot longer, like drum and bass, for example, and you look at the evolution of drum and bass and loudness in drum and bass, and it has been always an aggressive genre, but it used to be much, much more dynamic. And it's slowly, and then, at this tipping point in, 2022, 2023, all of a sudden, the drum and bass masters, because I play drum and bass a lot, and I love it. I produce it. I mix and master it for clients. And I would notice that a lot of drum and bass was loud but it was like -6 maybe. Very loud.
Mm-hmm.
Still sounding pretty good. The engineering talent in the drum and bass genre, to me, is like some of the best talent in the world. They're incredible producers. Unbelievable. And then I noticed, and a lot of other engineers have kind of corroborated this and noticed it as well. Then there's this push, and then drum and bass songs are getting like -3, -2. So what about that stuff? Do you listen to that genre, and do you have any comments there?
I love that genre. Actually, I listen it a lot. Well, not a lot, but sometimes when I drive a car. And completely agree that there is like extremely talented producers and the mix mastering engineers. Some of them are really piece of art and complexity how they manage to make those, because there's a subs and basses usually are splitted because sometimes it's difficult to have all those basses in this crunchy, grungy bass line. I think it's also a part of the genre that it has to sound very loud, and I think, well, that's maybe just a theory, like trying to brainstorm a little bit, but this is also how I see sometimes my session and the mix master. I almost divide a mixing session in 3 different layers. So I have very lows, like kick and sub, then I have mids, and I have like bright percussions. And it's almost like I have 3 different tracks together, and it's quite difficult to explain. So if I compress everything together in one group with kick, it will the kick will affect and maybe distort a little bit on the mastering, um, the whole picture. But if I do a group, and let's say I take one group with everything but the kick and the bass, I compress and I do a whole mastering on it, and then I do the same on the kick and the bass. The picture will be much brighter, sharper, and less dynamic in the LUFS. It can sound pretty good, especially for the aggressive style. It can give that nice punch and clearness in the lows without being conflicting with each other and have this distortion because of the lows. That's a little bit how I see, and also the work on those very aggressive bass and trap tracks.
Yeah, totally. So it's almost like a kind of like a stem mastering process where you're pushing some of the work off of the two bus, and you're maybe
group stem, kind of split of like almost frequency stem than a group stems.
Yeah. That's a neat way to do it. So adding processing to the kick and the sub together, kind of mastering those separately, and then merging those in with the other frequency ranges. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So let me just see here. I think we've covered most of what we want to talk about.
About AI, I think there'd been a question.
Yeah, exactly. So, AI is an interesting topic. Have you personally experimented with any AI music production or mixing or mastering tools yourself? And if so, what do you think about them?
Mixing and mastering, no. I just like made a few tests to create different tracks, and for now it's cool. It's fun to play, but it's hard to control. It's nice tool to unblock sometimes a creativity block. For example, in Suno, to take a little piece of your drop that's not sounding good, or like pre-drop with little part of the a cappella, and then it's create you a few different variation, and you think, oh, that's actually can work, and then just you build. So I don't use the AI what it generate, but it's just kind of tool to unblock things. But for mix mastering, I think right now I didn't hear it and I didn't experience anything good. It's definitely can do better if you have a bad mix or normal mix, but it's can't do the same work as a real mix mastering engineer. That's for sure, like 100%. I was, seeing a few, but the way how it work, I think one day we can arrive at the point where mix and mastering can reshape actually, so it will learn what you produced and it will reimagine it the way how it could be in the best way, how it has to sound, and of course AI will understand and will know better than any human what frequency we prefer to hear, that's might be one day an AI will do a better mastering than we do.
So you think so? You think AI will surpass us in its ability to mix and master?
I think it can, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what AI excels at, many things, but it needs a delta. It needs the before and the after, and then it can calculate what to do. And one of the current challenges with a lot of AI is consistency and personalization. So, for example, if you're using Midjourney or something like that to generate images, and you want to create consistent images of the same character with no variation, but you want variation in what they're wearing and the settings that they're in, that at one point was difficult, and then now that's becoming easier to do. And same thing with music, so much about mixing is subjective. If you have a mix, there might be 5 or 10 different ways of doing that mix, and all of them are technically correct and would sound good to you or me. Nothing would jump out. It would be a correct mix, but the artist may want it presented in a particular way based on their personal aesthetic. And I think that's what is currently missing from the AI mixing plugins, is that it's very difficult to personalize them. So I'm kind of imagining, down the road, and it wouldn't even need to be that far down the road because the technology is advancing so exponentially, that I could feed an AI my before mix and my after mix, and I could feed it my entire catalog of that. And then it could come up with a personal, this is the Vespers sound. This is how I would mix things, because I have a personal style in how I mix music. And my mixes sound different than your mixes and sound different than Luca's mixes. And, so when someone comes because they're coming to a particular engineer, part of it is that the engineer is adept. The engineer is going to get them a better quality result, but they also might like the particular sound that engineer has. And also with electronic music, a lot of artists are involved quite heavily in the mixing process, or doing all of the mixing themselves. And because it can be part of their personal sound.
Yeah, this is more like a topic about the taste. So I like it a little bit more aggressive, or I want a darker sound. Yeah, but it's at the same time, I think, those funny videos on YouTube, like someone draw just a horse, just like a funny horse, just one line, and the AI redo it and reshape it and make actually the real horse from it. So it stays this very basic form, but it make it nice from the basic form. But it keep that your personal artistic choice of making that horse. So imagine if the AI hear your imperfections. For example, you made a dark hard rock track, and of course it will understand that it's not a pop record, and it will stay dark. It will just even repair some problems with your guitar, maybe some extra noises that you made, and it will cut it. And we just reimagine in the correct style, and keep your idea initial, this drawing thing, and that's it. We don't need any mix mastering engineers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Cool. I think I only have 2 more questions for you, and then we can wrap up. One of the questions from Corduroy from our Discord server was, he was wondering about plugins that are your go-to tools and plugins that you can't live without. And I'll preface that by saying, I know that when we talked offline, you were saying that you were intentionally minimizing your plugin set, and you have this philosophy of keeping it simple. But that being said, of course, what are these ones that are in that chosen few? Because I'm assuming over the years you've experimented with hundreds or maybe thousands of plugins. So yeah, I'm curious what that looks like.
That's a that's a problem with my memory. Well, I'm a big user of Ableton Live internal plugins that come with. So the multi-band compressor from Abletunes, it's really handy thing, and I use it on a lot of productions. And for example, for the vocals, this is my very quick go tool for make that shining bright color of the vocal without popping with the sibilance. So it's kind of deezer and a brightener at the same time. A little saturator also on the basses that I use. Gulfos that I spoke a little bit. Yeah, this is a really tool that I don't know with what I can replace. Well, it works very good for me. I'm used to Isotope Ozone so much, so I think if once I will have to do digital master, software mastering only on different tools, that can be challenging. Well, pretty new. I mean, I have to learn. Well, it's quite standard. Fab filter is amazing. It's a very clean filtering sound. I got a very beautiful reverb from Sonic Academy Vela. It's almost 3 weeks ago that I'm testing, but I'm very, very happy. The rooms are like, it's really good one. Maybe I will do a list of the plugins because I can remember. There is a few, I don't remember the names. There is a very nice sort of a console emulator. It's almost doing nothing. It's just making the summing work. It's by Waves, I think, the plugin. And usually when I do a group of a lot of things inside, I put this warmer on the top, and it just I don't know how to explain. It just makes the thing sounds a little bit warmer without without adding any frequencies. It remove a little bit the peaks. Just the sounds became more glued out together.
Speaking of making things warmer,
yeah.
Did you say that when you're working in Ozone, you sometimes will use the maximizer and then after the maximizer, you use the analog limiter because you said that it makes it sound a little bit warmer on the master?
Yeah, I know. That's maybe a quite tricky thing, but yeah, I use the maximizer, and the sound is almost final. It's very loud, and I'm happy with it. And then I take the limiter and I try to get that half or 1 dB more, and it makes just the sound warmer. It's a little bit louder without distorting, and it works pretty good on my works. It's not even to get more volume. It's more for warm feeling of the final sound.
Yeah, right on. Cool. So last question for you is for other professionals in the industry. So, younger producers, engineers, artists, do you see anything opening up as new opportunities in the industry? I think with AI, we were talking about before, some people are feeling threatened, like maybe a lot of the jobs that there might have been, or career paths that there might have been, are kind of being impinged by AI and closed out. What do you see as opportunities? If you were somebody that was new and upcoming and young in the industry, what opportunities would you see right now in our current time?
Definitely, you have to follow all the trends that's going on with the AI. The thing is, like, we are all humans, and we won't go to the concert where just the screen will sing you the songs made by AI. So we like to have idols. We like to see real people, dancers, do performance, and that's, I think, while we stay humans and we do not put any chip in our head and we go completely in a virtual reality, I think we always will need a human interaction. And music, this is a part of this as well. So I think if you're an amazing producer, artist, performer, you will always have the spot and the job to do. The quality is always in demand. For example, well, the production made by AI, it's okay. Of course, for mass market like background music, yeah, that's pretty bad. The AI will replace it, but high standard quality artists and producers, I think they will stay, actual and in demand. So I don't think you have to be really. And also, another thing that we all forget when you're really like in a professional, the music is to have fun. So the most important is not like, oh, I made this track, do you like it? The first of and the most important, while you're making music, do you have fun? Do you like it yourself? That's the most important for the music. And you buy the synthesizer not because you want to have 500 likes on your story. It's because just you were there, you hear, you make music, and it's fun. And then if someone else like it, that's another thing, another story.
Yeah, well said. That's great. Well, we have taken a wonderful journey through your history and your career path and the way that you approach your work. And I know I have learned an absolute ton from listening to your responses,
Oh,
and I'm feeling really inspired personally to try out some of the things that you've said. And yeah, you've really got my creativity feeling amped up. And I just want to say thank you, both from myself and for everyone else on YouTube and from the Warp Academy community for taking the time and being so open and generous with your knowledge. I really have immense appreciation and respect for that. Not everybody does that. Some people just don't really like doing interviews, and some people are kind of guarded or whatever about their knowledge. But yeah, you've just been so kind and so generous with sharing what you know, and it'll enrich the experience of many thousands of people that get a chance to watch this interview. So huge thank you, Timofey.
my pleasure, and I'm really glad you invite me. This is amazing, and I'm not scared to share any secret. I think really, someone who looking for, they will find it anyway, by me or by another way. So I'm happy to share all this.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you all the best on your upcoming 3 weeks in the writing camp in LA. Sounds like a really fun experience, and we'll talk again on the other side, I'm sure. So thank you so much again.
Cool.